This week on Talking Pictures with Neil Rosen, we'll look at A Complete Unknown, the new Bob Dylan biopic starring Timothee Chalamet. The courtroom drama Juror No. 2, directed by Clint Eastwood. The Brutalist, starring Adrian Brody as a Holocaust survivor trying to build a new life in America, plus September 5th, about the 1972 Munich Olympic hostage crisis. We've got all that and many more movie picks coming up. I'm Neil Rosen, and welcome to Talking Pictures. It's our monthly Critic Roundtable show, where we debate what's worth watching and what's not when it comes to new releases, hidden gems, and Hollywood classics. Joining me are Bill McCuddy from GoldDerby.com, Edward Douglas from Cinema Daily US, and Roger Friedman from Showbiz 411. So let's start out with a look at several new films or series in theaters and or streaming, beginning with the new biopic about Bob Dylan called The Complete Unknown, starring Timothee Chalamet. Let's take a look at a clip.
Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head, pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Roger, we saw it together, but why don't you tell everybody all about A Complete Unknown?
This is one of the great treats of this year in movies. Timothee Chalamet finally breaks through and has a wonderful performance playing Bob Dylan. He sings the songs himself, he plays the guitar, and he's not doing an imitation. He's really just embodying Bob Dylan, and it's a beautiful performance. Pete Seeger is played by Edward Norton, also a great performance, and they're both getting a lot of awards attention. It's a good chance that Timothee Chalamet will win Best Actor at the Oscars this year. Everybody else in the movie, Monica Barbaro plays Joan Baez, and even though she doesn't look like Joan Baez, she sounds like her, and she's a beautiful singer. And Elle Fanning plays Bob's infamous girlfriend at the time, using a different name, but she's a terrific actress. It's a terrific film that tells the story of how Dylan came from Minnesota into the establishment of folk music. Now, I know it's hard to imagine that folk music was an important thing, but it was in 1961. And Dylan arrives in New York and blows the whole thing up. And over the course of 4 years, annoys everybody. And even though Pete Seeger is supposed to be his mentor, you can see Norton does a good job playing his growing distaste for Dylan, which is interesting. And then finally in 65, Dylan goes to the Newport Folk Festival, plugs in, goes electric. And as Dylan himself said recently in a tweet, of all things, it was a debacle. But the movie is directed by James Mangold, who has had many hits, but pertinent to this, directed the Johnny Cash movie Walk the Line.
And he puts Johnny Cash in this movie. He's got a thing for Johnny Cash.
He loves Johnny Cash, but Mangold has a great way of making these movies where it doesn't feel like a formula biopic. You feel like you're in something interesting and you want to see how it goes.
I will say this before anyone else says anything else. When this was first announced, everyone thought it was going to be a complete debacle. And Timothee Chalamet, as you said, embodies Dylan, but what the film really does is take us back to the 60s and plant us there when people were going crazy over the Cuba Missile Crisis, and everybody was running around the streets, and they find themselves in some of this music, and he does an amazing job. I'm not sure he's going to win Best Actor. I think that's Ralph Fiennes, but I love this film, and I urge everyone to go see it on Christmas.
Yeah, I'm definitely with Roger on him winning Best Actor because the Academy loves when they play real people.
They love it when they sing.
It's our prediction show.
Yeah, but I'm not a big Dylan fan. I never liked Dylan at all. I mean, I like Todd Haynes' movie, which is kind of weird and not really that much Dylan so much. This one is a lot more focused than Walk the Line. It's focused on those 5 years in Bob Dylan's life. I really enjoyed it. I think the performance was so good. Timothy and Melissa Barbaro as Joan Baez, the two of them when they're performing together. I mean, I got goosebumps, which is very rare.
And it's a terrific screenplay. They're best ensemble. That's the best ensemble, that group.
I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I had so much apprehension going into this, going, Timothee Chalamet's not even going to be lip-syncing to original Bob Dylan recordings. He's going to be doing his own thing. And he sounds like Dylan.
Yeah.
He's terrific in this.
Yeah.
And I love the title, A Complete Unknown. It's a triple entendre. First, it's the lyric in the song Like a Rolling Stone. Secondly, A Complete Unknown When he comes to New York in the early 60s, he is completely unknown. And thirdly, you watch the whole movie, and you really don't get to know Bob Dylan, how he created these brilliant songs and stuff. So in the end, he is still a complete unknown.
That's going to be the only knock on the film, as if anyone can do anything on it, they're going to say, geez, we spent all this time with this guy and we never really knew him. But the truth is nobody does.
But what's interesting is he had 5 sessions, screenwriting sessions, with James Mangold. So he was very involved in making this movie.
I love this movie. It's definitely on my 10 best list. And I think the attention to period detail, the way they made it look like you were on Bleecker Street with all those clubs.
And they were in Hoboken.
Yeah, I know, but they made it look like Bleecker Street in the early 1960s. It
easily on my top 10, too.
Great movie. Okay, let's move on. All right, Ed, tell us about September 5th, the movie.
Yeah, September 5th is a new movie that date's very significant. If you were alive in 1972, the Summer Olympics in Munich were kind of halted by a terrorist action where they basically kidnapped the Israeli athletes. And meanwhile, the ABC Sports team were covering the Olympics, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, you got to start covering this the terrorist thing. And it's a movie that's told from the perspective of the ABC Sports team, which is made up of John Magaro. Peter Sarsgaard plays Rune Ardledge, who's a kind of a veteran, an icon in
He's a bulldozer is what he is.
Yeah, but he's in broadcasting. He's known as an icon. And then it has Ben Chaplin, who we haven't seen in a while, and it has the German actress Leonie Benesch, who's in The Teacher's Lounge. And it's really a really good ensemble character piece, which shows you behind the scenes of a live news thing, which we don't get to see. I mean, a lot of people get to, obviously, people in the control room will know it, but not
Well,
everyone.
what's interesting is that they were the sports group, and they insisted on, they chose to do it and grab it overnight before the news department could get it. And then the news
Not only the
department
news
in New
department,
York,
CBS wants to take over some of the airtime
satellite.
because they're sharing the satellite. Listen, the thing nobody's mentioned is that this film is one of the original found footage movies because they used the actual Jim McKay, the real conversation with Howard Cosell, the real Peter Jennings, and then brilliantly kind of cast another actor to play Jennings in a couple of the scenes. I didn't expect anything from this film. The other thing we haven't said is, like this show, it mostly takes place in one scene, in one control room, and that would seem like a deadly idea on paper, but I think they really executed it well, and I love it. And I know you agree with me.
No,
probably.
I don't, because here's the thing. Maybe I'm too close to it, because having worked in newsrooms.
You were there at the Olympics?
Having worked in newsrooms for so many decades, I felt claustrophobic in this thing because 95% of the movie just takes place in that control room. And I'm like...
But that's the tension.
Right, and I understand that if you don't work in news, which most people don't, it's probably interesting to see. It's less about the hostages and those Israeli athletes as opposed to how ABC Sports covered this event live. And at the time, with not the technology that we have today, I mean, and I kind of thought this was interesting. They're taping film cans to this guy and dressing him up as an athlete that works in the control room to go in there. So that's kind of interesting. But generally speaking, for the running time of this thing, I mean, you're just in this control room. And I just found that to be a little just too much for me. But I guess if you're not in that business, you might find it an enlightening experience. To me, I wanted them to open it up, although other movies have covered the subject matter.
All right, Mr. Jaded, let's say that most of the people watching this now will enjoy it.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. I like the fact that it's only 90 minutes and they just stick to this story. There's no extraneous material at all. So you just feel propelled through the excitement and the adventure that they went through of trying to cover this terrible tragedy.
And that German actress from Teacher's Lounge is phenomenal. She's like the heart of them. In the beginning, they're asking her to get coffee, and by the end, she's running the whole show.
I did like Sarsgaard. I would recommend it. All right, let's move on.
Okay.
Juror number 2 is the name of director Clint Eastwood's new courtroom drama. Let's take a look at a clip.
You got this case all wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a hit and run.
No way. Emmy would have flagged it.
Well, yeah, you'd think. Let me just ask you one thing. Did you guys ever look at any other suspect?
We did our job.
All due respect, counselor, if you'd have done your job, I don't think we'd be standing here right now.
Well, that guy is bad news.
Maybe. But he didn't kill that girl.
Bill, What's the deal with Juror number 2?
Clint Eastwood is 94 years old, has directed over 30 pictures, and this is his latest one. And I have to tell you, the setup about a high-profile case is the best setup in courtroom drama history. It turns out one of the jurors, and I'm giving nothing away, this is very early on in the film, played by Nicholas Hoult, is guilty of the crime, and he's on the jury. He's not smart enough to get out of jury duty. He shows up, realizes what the case is, and realizes he's the guy that actually murdered or killed the person involved. Now he's got a huge moral dilemma. He's serving on the jury with J.K. Simmons. He's kind of a gumshoe that's going to do, they're not supposed to, a little detective work. And like the movie you just didn't like, it's 12 Angry Men if one of the people did it, but it's not all in the jury room. So we've got Toni Collette, who's the high-powered prosecutor, trying to railroad this case through. And it sounds better than it plays, but it's still enjoyable. This is not something I need to send people to a movie theater to see, but when it becomes a streamer, go ahead and look at Juror number 2.
You know what it is? It's a phenomenal episode of Law and Order. And
no, it's more than that. I think it's more than that.
It's no verdict. It's no, I mean.
But it's very, very well done. Nicholas Hoult is excellent as
he's pretty good.
Perpetrator.
I think another actor could have done a better job than Nicholas Hoult, but I still love the movie.
Well, I think Nicholas Hoult was meant to be sort of like an everyman who had this problem and didn't realize that when he was driving that he hit somebody.
Right.
And decided that he hit an animal. And later the story came out and he sort of thought, oh, is that me? And now he winds up in the courtroom having to...
No, it's a tremendous setup, as I said.
Ed?
Yeah, I've gotten really good at getting out of jury duty, so I'm not really sure how he had a problem. For me, it's like I just
Can you tell us how you do it?
I just go in and just say, oh, I hate cab drivers. I hate whatever. It's worked.
What do you think of the movie?
This movie, I really liked it a lot. Warner Brothers threw it in theaters, like didn't report any box office. They just threw it in theaters. People went to go see it, but like it was always meant for Max. And because it was Clint Eastwood and his relationship with Warner Brothers, they said, okay, we'll put it in theaters, but they really kind of buried it, so people didn't know it was in theaters. But it's a great movie. It's worth seeing wherever you can see it.
It did very well internationally.
Oh, I imagine.
Clint Eastwood is such a good storyteller. If you look at some of his movies, I mean, the stories are great.
I think bad
as
movies.
you said, the premise, it's just like, wow. I mean, you know, and he doesn't even know
the premise is better than the movie.
He doesn't even know that what his responsibility in this is. He learns it as he's sitting on the trial, and it'll screw up his whole life, whether or not it's a moral dilemma, whether to like divulge this information or not. But I think that it's so well done. And how good is J.K. Simmons? I mean, in his supporting role.
I'm not going to give too much away, but we don't have him for the whole movie. There's a couple of things that aren't great about this film.
And even though the ending is ambiguous, you know, yeah. Well, I don't really want to talk about the ending, but Clint Eastwood filmed a couple of different endings, but he wanted it to be like a '70s movie, like The Graduate, where like he wanted audiences to discuss it afterwards.
There's no ambiguity about this. Watch it, folks, and let's
ambiguous.
Anyway, it's well worth watching.
Recommended.
To the very ambiguity.
Recommended. Okay, fine. Let's
hope
move on.
Clint Eastwood makes another movie. That would be great.
All right. So we're not going to talk for 3.5 hours about this movie, even though that's the length of the movie. But Ed, tell us about The Brutalist.
The Brutalist is the third movie from Brady Corbet. He's an interesting guy because he's actually started as a child actor. He started directing maybe 5-6 years ago, and The Brutalist is kind of like a really powerful movie. It's like the kind of movie that you see like Citizen Kane, where people watch it and it's like, wow, that's a movie.
Now,
and
Citizen Kane was a good movie.
Well, okay, we'll get to that in a little bit. Let me finish telling you what it's about. So basically it's about this Hungarian architect who's an immigrant. He comes to the United States in the 40s after the war. He has trouble, as with many immigrants had. He makes his way up through, meeting a wealthy guy played by Guy Pearce, and he starts building this really fancy rec center for him. But it's really kind of more about the immigrant experience and more about how he's mistreated, how he's this brilliant architect.
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody plays Laszlo Toth, this architect, and he's a genius. He's arrogant, but he's also constantly being put down by everything around him. And it's a long movie for sure. It gets really dark in the second half, but it's worth sticking through for these performances by Adrian Brody. By Felicity Jones is amazing also, and Guy Pearce is great too.
Bill?
I saw a different movie. And I'm going to encourage anyone who's interested enough to see it based on everything you hear, that when it streams, watch it like a miniseries, because that's what it maybe should have been. At 3.5 hours, it's a real slog. It's the Brutalist for me. And I thought that the real problem with it was the moral ambiguity of, we were talking about that in the last film, of the Adrian Brody character. He has no backbone. He makes these amazing buildings, but when they ask him, for example, as a Jew to build a Protestant church, he goes, "Okay, I put a big cross at the top. Everybody will love it." He also has a drug problem. He may be cheating on his wife. We're not sure. And then the Guy Pearce character kind of sweeps him up, takes him on a world tour. They pick Marble out together, and it's got a dreadful ending.
It's a movie that wants to be a masterpiece. And it's shaped like a movie from the 70s.
It's trying to be There Will Be Blood. That's what
it's like. There will
or
be
the
blood.
Fountainhead.
But it's also
Yes.
very much like a Terrence Malick movie.
Yeah.
It's got a. And,
Those are long too.
Yeah, and the cinematography, it sets it up for that. It's all very muted, and you know it's very important. I thought Adrian Brody was terrific, and I thought Felicity Jones as his wife was terrific. But many things in the actual story don't make sense.
Yes.
And
Correct.
the pieces don't fit together very well.
Thank you.
Everyone got excited about this when they first saw it because it's a 4-hour movie almost, and it only cost $10 million. So they're like, how did he do it for $10 million?
That is
Well,
amazing.
maybe if he had spent $20 million,
have a
we would
movie.
know a little bit more about it.
Well, it's brutal to
so
sit through the brutal.
It's brutal to sit. It's a brutal movie.
I saw it twice. I actually
Oh
sat
my
through it twice.
God.
Oh my
Yes, he
God.
advised me
I saw it
during the
twice.
intermission. He advised me about the second half. The
Because
second
we're
half,
done, yeah.
you're better off never watching the second half.
Wait, you deserve an honorary Oscar for sitting through it twice.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Okay, this is actually in the mix if you go to some betting sites of one of the odds-on favorites to be voted Best Picture. It is not a great film. Since this is a Jewish-themed movie that deals with anti-Semitism, I'm going to give you a Yiddish word that describes this movie. It's called fakakta,
Yeah.
okay, which means it's a mess. It's all over the place. As you said, Roger, there are things in this. First of all,
don't make sense.
at 3.5 hours, I shouldn't have to go after the movie and look things up, like why he was so obsessed with going an extra 10 feet high in that building that he was building. And apparently, which is not explained in the movie, he wanted it to be the same exact height as the concentration camp that he was in Europe.
Well, that's
Okay.
explained in the epilogue when she
I'll tell you
gets
who
up
I
and
thought was
gives
really
that
good in it.
speech.
Alessandro Nivola plays his cousin,
Yes, he was
who's
good.
already
He's
moved
good.
to America
But not-
and has become completely Americanized.
So many things, as you said, that don't make sense in this movie. First of all, his wife is wheelchair bound for most of the movie. At the end of the movie, all of a sudden she's walking. Okay,
Yes.
there are.
It's a Christmas
there-
miracle.
there-
That was his granddaughter, actually.
No, no, it's his daughter, his wife.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
No.
And he saw it
Felicity,
twice.
You saw it twice.
Yeah, and you saw it
Felicity
twice.
Jones plays his wife.
I'm not going to give the details because I don't want to do a spoiler. There's a rape scene in this that doesn't make any sense. As you said, he's addicted to heroin. Okay, I don't know anybody who could casually use heroin and when they want to. I mean, he's not like a junkie. That doesn't make sense. There's in the beginning of the movie when he comes over from Europe, there are these gratuitous sex scenes that are in here for the
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it was porn in the 20s or whatever. I mean, it's crazy.
No, it's
Listen,
1948.
we have the danger of going 3.5 hours for a bad movie, so I'm going to say maybe we should wind it up. But man, do not see The Brutalist. It's brutal.
Next up is a movie called The Different Man that stars Sebastian Stan. Bill, tell us about it.
And this is a very different movie than the last one we saw, although I wasn't that thrilled with this one either. This is about a struggling actor, Sebastian Stan, who suffers from something called neurofibromatosis, which is a disease that greatly disfigures the face. And so he is a very specific kind of actor. Also in this movie is Adam Pearson, who's a British gentleman who also suffers from that, but he does in real life. This is the pass the movie gets for telling this story. Stan lives next door to Renate, am I saying Rensve correctly? She's the Norwegian actress that was in the Worst Person in the World.
That's
and
a great movie, The
She's
Worst
still the
Person.
worst person in the world as the woman that kind of leads this actor on, dumps him. Then when Sebastian Stan has a medical procedure and turns into Sebastian Stan, he is an actor who goes and tries out for the play version of his uglier self called Edward. He gets the lead. He starts sleeping with her. Then the real Adam Pearson, the guy who has it in real life, this disease, comes in, steals the part, steals the girl.
Yeah, he's like the life of the party. The other guy was all
He's
sullen.
actually kind of funny and cool. I liked him, and I think he's the high point of the film.
When Sebastian Stan had the disease, before he was made to look like a hot, studly guy,
Right.
you know, he was just all like depressed and walking around. And this, Adam Pearson is like, everybody wants to be around him. And he's like jokes and funny and, you know.
It plays like a strange Saturday Night Live sketch, but it's not that good. And,
I liked it.
It's getting a lot of great praise, but I'm not a big fan.
Ed?
Yeah, I was familiar with Adam Pearson beforehand, and I knew that he had done a movie with Aaron Shinberg, the director, before.
Right.
And the director, Aaron actually wrote this part with Adam in mind. I was actually confused though, because I was watching the movie and I didn't realize that was Sebastian Stan because he had very similar makeup on him to look like Adam. So I was a little confused at first, but then as I went along, I really got into it. It reminds me more of like Charlie Kaufman. It's a Charlie Kaufman type of movie.
It is very reminiscent.
Where it's like when Adam shows up as this other character, it's like, whoa, which is which? What's going on here? It's very confusing, but it's also very funny. And Adam is amazing. I hope he gets more roles. Regardless of what he looks like, he's just has a lot of charm and personality. He could be like Peter Dinklage. He could just get any role.
Would you recommend it?
I absolutely recommend it.
Me too, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But let me hear Roger's.
I was just going to say about Sebastian Stan. He's also in The Apprentice.
He's great in The Apprentice.
Much better than that.
But he's good in both of them. And I thought it was really just overall, it's a big leap from him doing Marvel movies. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for doing these two parts. And I thought he was actually very good in this. But you're right, Adam Pearson, because it's about him really, and it's about, he's disfigured the way the kid was in Mask. And because it's about him and it's real, and he's got this great British accent, and he's very funny, Adam Pearson. And so I found the movie kind of winning. It's strange, but it's winning.
I think this was a very interesting movie. It's kind of like a weird take on Beauty and the Beast meets The Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I was really impressed with Sebastian Stan. I mean, the first time he came to my attention was playing Tommy Lee in that Pam and Tommy movie. And then I see him in The Apprentice, and now I see him in this. This guy is a very versatile, really well-skilled actor, and I was extremely impressed with the performance. And what really makes this work for me is the fact that, like, he's in love with however you pronounce her name, the neighbor. And, you know, when he, all of a sudden, the new medical procedure works, I don't understand why he just doesn't tell her, you know, that he had the procedure. He wants to present himself as, like, he changes his name and everything.
Right.
But the fact that she's all of a sudden falling for this guy that is all, you know, that has that disease, and you're saying, he's going like, this could have been me, you know.
But what you're describing is a movie where you don't like anybody except the Adam Pearson character. And I think he's worth seeing.
I like the Sebastian Stan character.
He turns into a jackass real estate salesman.
There's twisted, darkly comedic parts to it also, and it's satirical. And I found the whole thing to be like I was very involved in it.
This sounds great to you. By all means, seek it out.
I like it.
recommend
It's on Netflix and it's easy to watch.
Police all over Europe are looking for him.
We are reaching out to all our international partners for assistance.
He's an exceptional assassin. He will kill again unless we stop him.
There's no record of him anywhere. This guy's a ghost.
I know I can find him.
I've heard good things about you, Bianca. Don't let me down.
That was a clip from the Peacock series, The Day of the Jackal. It happens to be Bill McCuddy's personal choice. We go around the panel as we do every month with our critics' picks of the month. Bill.
You know, this is kind of a cool new thing that's happening. And The Day of the Jackal was a motion picture in 1973 by Fred Zinnemann. It was a great film. Starred Edward Fox, and they've decided to make it into a 10-part miniseries on Peacock. And I got to tell you, Eddie Redmayne is fantastic as the Jackal. But what's even more interesting is he's followed by a tenacious British IM6 or intel woman that works for MI6, and she's taking stride for stride. She's right on his tail. I'm not going to give too much away. He's married to the gorgeous Ursula, I want to say Corbero. She was in Money Heist. So he's got a home life. There's lots of dimensions that would have felt heaped on in a 10-parter, but this is all integral to the part. It travels the world. It's like a Bond film. I can't recommend it enough. On Peacock, Day of the Jackal.
Ed, what's your pick?
My pick is I'm Still Here. It's a new movie from Brazilian filmmaker Walter Salles. It's his first narrative feature in, I guess, maybe 12 years or so. It's a fantastic film. It's set in 1971. It involves a kind of a low-level diplomat who kind of was kidnapped or taken by the government. His wife spends decades trying to find him, to find out if he's alive or dead. It features an amazing performance by Fernanda Torres, who is the daughter of Fernanda Montenegro, who actually starred in Walter Salles' Oscar-nominated Central Station, and she got an Oscar nomination for her performance. Her daughter, Fernanda Torres, should get an Oscar nomination for this. It's really good. It's a long movie, but it shows you a part of history in Brazil. I actually lived in Brazil during those years. I was very, very young, So this movie was very personal to me. I still have family down there. And it shows you what can happen to government if you let it get out of control, let power get out of control. It's an amazing film.
Roger, what's your pick?
What is my pick? It's Nickel Boys.
Nickel Boys.
Nickel Boys.
That'll get nominated.
Right, that's going to be nominated for Best Picture. Ramel Ross is the director. There's nobody in it that you really know except for Ingenue Ellis, who plays the aunt of a young black man who winds up in a terrible reform school in Florida. And this is a real story from the 60s. And the black kids and the white kids are separated from each other. The white kids are given all kinds of opportunities and they're treated very well, and the black kids are tortured. And so the idea was to tell this story about what had happened to these kids, finally revealing it. And the two young black actors are terrific. Ingenue Ellis is terrific, but really the star of the movie is the director, which is so unusual. But he's made a movie where he's telling the stories of the two young men from their point of view. So you don't see them when they're talking, you see who they're talking to. And I thought this is something new and really exciting and fresh. And I think people who see it, if you have a little patience for it, will really appreciate it. And the movie is very well made, and it does expose this one of the many terrible stories of the South in the early days.
Well, that's about all the time we have. I want to thank Bill McCuddy, Edward Douglas, and Roger Friedman. I'm Neil Rosen. Join us next time on Talking Pictures.